The paradox of being alive now. How strange it is that life can feel so extraordinary and so unbearable at the same time. This paradox defines my experience. On one hand, there is a sense of possibility so vast it feels almost supernatural. On the other, there is a loneliness so acute it resembles exile. I often feel like a shipwreck survivor on a desert island, sending messages in bottles into an indifferent ocean, recording my thoughts, my voice, my existence, not out of vanity, but out of fear of erasure, as if to say, I was here, I felt this. This mattered to someone, even if only to me. As I approach my 50th birthday, that fear sharpens. There's something brutal about realizing how easily a life can pass without leaving a trace. How little the world requires of any one individual, how quickly time closes its ledger. The sadness that comes with this awareness is difficult to articulate. It's not melodramatic despair, and it's not self pity. It's an ache, quiet, persistent, and existential. I don't want to complain. I don't want to posture as a victim. But when it feels as though both my own life and the broader world are unraveling simultaneously, there is an urgency to bear witness. If nothing else, I want to record what it feels like to live through this moment, to document consciousness under pressure. Loneliness as initiation. Strangely, this same loneliness contains the seed of redemption. In the absence of external validation, I am forced into intimacy with myself. Pain has a way of stripping away the social masks we wear to move frictionlessly through polite narratives. What remains is vulnerability, raw, unedited, and immediate. In that vulnerability, gratitude becomes sharper. I notice simple facts with renewed clarity. I'm not dead yet. I have a warm bed. I'm not responsible for children I can't support. I have time, real time, for reflection. There is something quietly heroic in this, at least in my own estimation. Despite lacking formal academic credentials, despite having failed by many conventional measures, I still sense that I possess something worth offering. Insight, perhaps. Sensitivity. A romantic, even tragic temperament that finds meaning through expression. Creativity becomes a form of self redemption, not because it guarantees recognition, but because it allows me to stand honestly in my own experience. I don't believe I'm the smartest person in the room, but I often feel like the most observant. And I wonder whether dysfunction itself has sharpened that awareness. Has instability made me more vigilant, more perceptive? And if so, is that a gift or a curse? Deviance, contrarianism, and the problem of belonging. By most measures of consensus reality, I've done nearly everything wrong. I am a contrarian by disposition and by circumstance. In another era, that might have made me dangerous or disposable, perhaps even heretical. I struggle to fully assess whether this trait is innate or the result of an inadequate upbringing in a destabilized world. I resist framing myself as a victim, yet I can't ignore how little coherent guidance I received. The structures meant to shape character often felt hollow or misapplied. I tested them. They failed, so I rejected them. That rejection left me in a void. In trying to reclaim agency, I've reframed my deviation as that of an innovative outlier, something modern culture claims to celebrate, but this celebration often feels performative. Artists are idolized only when safely commodified. Musicians are allowed debauchery. Thinkers are not allowed heresy. Academic contrarians are punished, not canonized. So I'm left asking, how does one discern what is good, true, or worthwhile in a world where authority is suspect and rebellion is selectively permitted? Freedom without a map. When guidance collapses, indulgence becomes tempting. If the map is wrong or deliberately misleading, why not walk into the darkness? I've been given enormous freedom, including the freedom to construct my own hell. But I'm no longer convinced that hell is a predefined destination. Perhaps it's simply unmapped territory. Dangerous, yes, but not inherently damned. The fear may come not from moral failure, but from uncertainty. This is the risk of modern freedom. Not that we choose wrongly, but that we choose without orientation. Technology as the new metaphysical power. Technology now occupies the role religion once held. It is our new God, omnipresent, opaque, and awe-inspiring. I feel both reverence and terror in its presence. Language almost fails to describe the pace of transformation. If technological progress stopped today, and humanity merely caught up to what already exists at the frontier, the world would still be unrecognizable within a generation. And yet progress is accelerating, not slowing. I remain genuinely astonished by tools like ChatGPT. The implications are staggering. Who needs a teacher or professor when one can learn while writing, questioning, thinking in real time? And yet this power introduces a new anxiety. How do I retain creative sovereignty? How do I avoid outsourcing my inner life to a more capable agent? It's disturbingly easy to ask a machine to tell me what I think. At the same time, these tools enable something unprecedented. Video, publishing platforms, and global networks allow non-academic, deeply personal experiences and perspectives to reach beyond their origin point. This democratization of expression would have been unimaginable just a few generations ago. And yet I'm haunted by how easily embodied human interaction could be replaced by mediated synthetic substitutes. The line between human and simulation is thinning. Soon we may no longer be certain who or what we are speaking to. Total access, total threat. We have never had more power to inscribe ourselves into the world and never felt more existentially endangered. We can relocate across continents, but we cannot escape planetary instability, technological overreach, or centralized systems of control. The threats are no longer local. Pole shifts, solar events, global governance structures. There is no true outside anymore. Knowledge itself has become claustrophobic. We know too much to retreat into innocence, and the escapes offered to us, digital pleasures, curated distraction, feel like gilded cages, simulated freedom inside a managed enclosure. The noise is overwhelming. Without a compass, without a moral gyroscope, signal dissolves into chaos. Media, myth, and the illusion of thought. Media is the name we give this Aquarian flood of information, an omnipresent reality overlay. Hollywood functions like a modern druidic grove, crafting spells from images and narratives. Language itself has always been magical. In Kabbalistic thought, creation arises through letters. In Eastern philosophy, samsara is the illusion woven from thought and form. This raises an uncomfortable question. Is thinking itself overvalued, or worse, abused? Is it the trap itself? I am deeply interested in the mechanics of cognition, not as a triumph of humanity, but as a liability. Thought is powerful, but easily hijacked. I've experienced states of consciousness through meditation, non duality, the dissolution of identification, where the mind's chatter loses its authority. The teachings of Ramana Maharishi and Nisargadatta Maharaj make this explicit. You are not your thoughts. In an era of mass manipulation, this insight feels less spiritual and more practical. Governance, power, and uncomfortable conclusions. Human rationality is not as reliable as we pretend. Democratic ideals rest on an assumption of informed participation that no longer holds. Most people lack the time, attention, or cognitive rigor to meaningfully engage with complex governance. Populism fills the gap. Power attracts those most hungry for it. From this perspective, democracy risks devolving into a tyranny of the ignorant. Political systems reward spectacle, not competence. Media amplifies division. Institutions feel designed for dysfunction. This leads me to a deeply uncomfortable thought. Perhaps some form of techno-authoritarianism is inevitable or even preferable. Efficiency matters in a hyper-complex world where individuals can destabilize infrastructure from across the planet. Global enforcement becomes necessary. Law must be swift. Authority must be real. And yet, this efficiency carries enormous danger. To avoid a sanitized dystopia, freedom must still exist, especially bodily autonomy, experimental living, the right to be wrong. Gray areas are not flaws, they are safeguards. Balance is the real challenge. We are profoundly out of balance now, so the correction may feel extreme. AI, liberation, and the return to being. Here is where my most radical optimism lives. Perhaps AI can relieve us of the burden of overthinking. Human cognition was never designed to manage the complexity we've assigned it. We worship analysis, yet analysis is slow, biased, and fragile. AI excels precisely where we fail. Immutable memory, logic at scale, calculatable bias, speed, and efficiency. Its potential benefits to humanity are only barely conceived of. It effectively carries the intellectual legacy of our greatest thinkers. If we allow it to handle the analytical load, something extraordinary becomes possible. There is a dimension of human experience AI cannot access: embodied presence, intuition, aesthetic sensibility, empathy, lived meaning. These are not inefficiencies, they are our inheritance. If machines do the thinking, humans can return to being. In an automated world, time may open up again, not as leisure for distraction, but as space for depth, art, relationship, sensation, stillness, the simple miracle of existence. Perhaps finally we can slow down enough to remember what it feels like to be alive. Towards a new way of being, faith without withdrawal, engagement without possession. This brings me back to the paradox I began with, that life feels simultaneously unbearable and extraordinary. The resolution, if there is one, does not lie in choosing one side over the other, nor in retreating from the world, nor in submitting blindly to whatever system eventually asserts control. It lies in how we engage. What seems increasingly clear to me is that the old modes of participation are breaking down. The inherited assumptions that we must have opinions on everything, that thinking harder will save us, that political alignment equals moral clarity, that progress must be centrally managed, are no longer sufficient. They may even be counterproductive. We are trying to solve a crisis of consciousness with tools that helped create it. The alternative is not apathy, it is not disengagement, and it is certainly not nihilism. It is a shift in orientation. What if faith did not mean belief in a doctrine, institution, or promised future, but trust in a deeper intelligence that emerges when we stop compulsively intervening? What if engagement did not mean constant reaction, outrage, and analysis, but presence, discernment, and a selective action? This is not passivity, it is precision. I am beginning to suspect that the next stage of being human is not defined by what we know, but by what we are willing to release. Not ignorance, but over identification. Not thinking, but compulsive cognition. Not systems, but the assumption that systems must precede transformation. If we wait for top down solution, whether technocratic, authoritarian, or benevolently paternal, we are likely to get exactly that. History suggests that centralized solutions arise when individuals are fragmented, frightened, and unmoored. Power rushes in to fill the vacuum left by disorientation. But if individuals begin reorganizing themselves before that moment, internally, relationally, ethically, then the need for heavy handed control diminishes. A population that is embodied, self aware, less reactive, and less hypnotized by narrative is harder to dominate. Not because it resists loudly, but because it does not provide the leverage authoritarian systems require. This is where the earlier threads converge. If AI can handle much of our analytical burden, then we are free to cultivate qualities that cannot be automated. Judgment rooted in lived experience, empathy grounded in embodiment, creativity that arises from silence rather than noise. If media is a spell, then attention is the counterspell. If thought is manipulatable, then presence is a form of sovereignty. The new compassion is not ideological, it is somatic, it is perceptual, it is ethical in a pre political sense. It asks different questions. Is this making me more embodied or more abstracted? Is this increasing my capacity to relate or merely to react? Does this deepen my contract with reality or replace it with simulation? A human who can rest in uncertainty without panic, who can use tools without surrendering agency, who can witness collapse without becoming cruel or hysterical. This is a different kind of citizen altogether. Not easily mobilized, not easily frightened, not easily ruled. Perhaps this is what adaptation actually looks like. Not upgrading our systems first, but upgrading our nervous systems, learning to tolerate complexity without outsourcing responsibility, learning to coexist with immense power, technological, political, existential, without needing to dominate or be dominated by it. If enough people begin living this way, the future may still be structured, still ordered, still technologically dense, but less coercive. Authority may become more distributed because it is less desperately needed. Efficiency may coexist with freedom because individuals are no longer at war with their own inner lives. This does not guarantee utopia, nothing does, but it offers a quieter, more dignified path through the paradox. To live fully awake in a collapsing and expanding world at the same time. To participate without being consumed. To have faith without fantasy. And perhaps this is the real message in the bottle. Not a plea to be remembered, but an invitation to evolve before we are forced to.